password changes, we're going to send you an alert. That's just, we want that as a hard-coded alert so you're always aware of those. But the rest of these we can certainly go in and edit. Date alerts are fairly straightforward. If I want to remind myself that, I have a meeting on the 25th and I want that, that it's an important meeting, and then I can select my delivery message. The delivery method will always be secure message, email, phone, or text, and you can determine which of those is most valuable for the specific alert. So if this is a meeting, secure message is probably adequate, even though that forces me to log in the system. I could also send myself a text message by keying in the text phone number, agreeing to the SMS terms, and off we go. Probably not a real valid use of a text. I would probably want to know something around my account history. So if I wanted to go set up an account alert where a given account dropped above or below a certain balance, then text me. Those are the real use cases that we see of alerts. But there are hundreds to choose from. The only caution that we would advise you folks on is it's really easy to go set up a bunch of alerts because the system has so many. If you deluge yourself with hundreds of alerts each week, you'll start to not pay attention to them. So really fine tune that to what your business needs are, but they're out there. Again, text banking, you can enroll in text banking through the text enrollment area by simply turning it on, keying in the text number, agreeing to those terms and saving, and then you'll receive an email, or excuse me, a text with further instructions so that you could know what the short codes are and you can begin using text banking if you so desire. And then mobile authorization is an area that allows you to set up. If I'm a drafter, as the administrator of the system, I can go and set up mobile authorization codes for adding an email or a phone number so that I can authorize these things from the field. All that does is allows my drafters, when they draft something, to have a target, a phone or email target, to send me the request and the alert that this payroll that I just drafted, I'm not able to approve it. You do need to approve it. You're at a business meeting or you're at the golf course, please do so. And this is a mechanism by which you can enroll and take care of that. So that would round out the settings. Moving kind of speedily through these. These are things that you use a couple of times and then it's kind of fire and forget. We don't really come back and use them frequently, but they are there. So important to know that they're there. I'd like to change gears. That kind of rounded us through some of the consumer functionality. I'd really like to start to dissect some of the commercial functionality, because that's the meat and potatoes of what a lot of us are looking to do in the system. System grants us the ability to do a lot of expansion and scalability, and that's where I'd like to focus next. The first stop on our commercial review, and there are a few areas here, I'd like to start, if we could, with recipients. We looked at recipients earlier, so because this is a commercial client, or at least a representation of a commercial client, I see all of my recipients, and the same rules are true. I can change that view from tile to list if I'm in a device that requires that. I can go in and edit one at any time, and I can add a recipient, or I can delete a recipient. This is simply my area to manage recipients, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll migrate those recipients over, and they'll be present in this area. Now, what can I do with those recipients? That's accessible by coming over to the payments area. So up above, we were kind of showing payments in terms of what would a restriction to wire transfer look like, but here you have access to all of the different payment styles and types. So you have your available templates. If you're going to execute a payment through one of the templates, you can go create a new template as we discussed, or we can create a new payment right from the get-go. So it's important to know that what are these payments? We have the ability to manage ACH batches. So this would be a single debit on my side and a number of credits that are going out to others. So a batched ACH payment. I can do an ACH collection, which is the reverse of that. Say I own a small gym and I'm going to debit my members of my club twice a month, half of them on the 15th, half of them on the 25th. I would create an ACH collection badge, which would debit their accounts and credit my account. And then ACH payment and receipt are the singular versions of those. I would make a single payment to somebody, or I would draft a single payment to myself from somebody through the receipt. I can also execute a domestic wire or an international wire, and I can make a payment from a file. If you are managing, say, your payroll in an external source that outputs to a spreadsheet or something, and I just want to import a single batched file, I can do so from payment from a file simply by, in fact, if I were to select that, we'll stop there first. I can go and select a kind of payment. These are simple payments. They're not multi-batch. This might be a pardon me, payroll that I manage somewhere else. Pardon me. And then once selected, we'll see the guidelines that will all take you all the way through what you should select, what should be contained in that CSV file. If I were to select this link, there's a PDF representation of that file specification. Once I understand all those things are, what I need to know, I would simply select here to browse to wherever on my network those files were, collect them, and import them into online banking. So if you're doing that today, there's a quick and easy provision to get those in the system. Otherwise, let's look at a traditional payment batch. In this case, if we were to go and execute this payroll, notice we only have 3 total template batches that are available to us. That's because that's all we have. If you had 50 of them, you can certainly highlight one as a favorite and it'll stage it to the top of the list so that you needn't go and have to search for that every time you log in. Your favorites will always be staged at the top. You can grab one, and by clicking the pencil, we can begin this payment process. Very simple. In this case, we're going to go to the recipient and amount. Mr. Marshall is there again. Didn't work very hard this week, so he gets $1. We would select, yes, he's in the payment batch. If we had a payment batch of multiple recipients, we would select each one that needs to be paid, select the amount, add the addenda record as necessary, and hit next. Again, we'll select our subsidiary if we have one. Maybe this is going to, and I'll define subsidiary for everyone today. It's really just the tax ID number under which the payment should be processed. If you run a small holding company with multiple tax IDs underneath, it's just a way for you to make sure that you're routing your payments correctly with those tax IDs. You can use the same corporate accounts, but use the subsidiary that's appropriate to the payment style. Or if we need to add a new one, we can do so. You'll find that the system is very flexible. In traditional cash management systems, you really rigidly manage recipients in one area, payments in another area, subsidiaries in another area. We do allow that to occur, but we also know that real business process, you may be here making a payroll, you just hired somebody, you didn't get a chance to go and add them to the recipient list. So we're going to always provide a button on each of these tabs that allows you to go out, quickly add a recipient or quickly add to your subsidiary list if you need to. In this case, we're going to move on to our account. We'll pay from our primary checking account. We'll hit next. We'll select the payment date. In this case, payroll is going to be for Friday. I'm doing it a couple of days in advance. I could also set any of these transactions to a schedule, which is very convenient. I can set that as a recurrence, or I can set it out in the future. In this case, I will draft that because I don't have approval. I do have approval rights, or I wouldn't say approved, but for the purposes of what we're doing, we're going to draft that, and we will close that. So I can execute a payroll, in this case, quite simply by using a template, or I could go and create a brand new batch from scratch, a brand new payment. If I were to say, do an ACH payments batch, I could grab one from the drop-down, and again, here's a list of our one-time payments in terms of our recipients. We can choose from all of our recipients, or we can add a new recipient right on the fly. In this case, we'll just grab Mr. Dixon. Which subsidiary are we going to pay from? What account are we going to pay from? I don't think I added an amount. And then review and submit by selecting the date. Maybe that one's going to go out on Thursday, and do not want a recurrence on that, and I'll draft that one as well. Very, very, very easy to execute a straight through batch, particularly if I have all the moving parts. Again, it's saying, hey, you only drafted this, you haven't yet approved it. So I can close that. Or I can, with whatever complexity we need to, we can go and create those new items on the fly. So it's important. And then, of course, we have the little snapshot in the upper right-hand corner of our pending and processed transactions. So payment workflows, especially using the items that are being migrated, very quick, very efficient, and you can add or detract from them in the workflow. You don't have to stop and go, gosh, why is that recipient still in there? And go out and delete or add a recipient. All of it can be done through the payments workflow. All right, subsidiaries, we didn't talk about, this is the main area where you can go add them. We've been kind of adding and talking about them in line, but there's a recipient area, a subsidiary area, and a payment area. or you can cross-pollinate any of those workflows as you need to. Now, there's a more complex transaction out there. We showed payment from a batch. There are occasionally opportunities for us to have to do an ACH pass-through. An ACH pass-through is usually multi-batch, and it is something that is not a CCD or PPD payment class. These are webs, .webs, .tels. We have that ability to do an ACH pass-through if you're doing that kind of complexity. You're managing this in an external system. You have a multi-batch import. It's simply a matter of selecting the file. I don't have one on this test computer, so I won't do that. Adding the memo and the process date and approving and inserting that as you go. So the system will allow you to completely manage payrolls and ACH payments inside the system. We can also take external files if you're doing that management outside of the system as well. Tax payments, I do want to spend just a moment on tax payments because I think these are kind of interesting. A lot of small business owners will go out and register and log into the IRS payment portal and execute these kinds of payments, or the same thing for our state taxes. That's all been programmed and inserted into the online banking system such that, for instance, I'm doing my 941s every quarter. I might come out and select a 941 file. The company name is already populated. My tax ID is populated. I would select the payment effective date. Maybe this is going to be effective the end of the month for the tax period ending, let's see, January, February, March. I'm a lot late on my quarterly, but it's for the end of March. In this case, I'm going to make this payment from my primary checking account. The to account and the routing number, this is for the IRS. This is already hard coded, and I need to select what kind of tax. So in this case, sorry for the clicker there. This is a penalty payment because it's late, and then I would key in whatever that amount was. I can also split those payments if it's appropriate, and upon approval, I send out that tax payment. What's good, and I'll actually going to cancel this one. I don't want any tax payments going out. What's interesting about tax payments when they're integrated into online banking is just like all of the rest of the items that are contained under online activity for which we keep a permanent record, now you can fold in all those tax payments. That's just another searchable category here, and we would have all of those tax payments for the entire tenure that you enjoy with us. All of those tax payments would be out there for scrutiny anytime by who submitted them, what account they were paid from, and all of those details. Furthermore, once this loads, we will also be loading in Maryland taxes in addition to the Virginia taxes that we have and DC taxes. So all of our local taxes that are also due, those forms are being programmed and installed into the system as well. So federal and local state taxes are in the system and then permanent records of those. So I don't need to go out and log into the IRS site or a separate site for my state taxes at the end of the year to get that. It's all right here. All right, now a company, and I don't mean to speed through this too quickly. I just know that phone calls are kind of difficult to stay on the phone for a very large amount of time. But we do want you to know that each of these payment styles, these payment workflows, are all exactly the same, regardless of the kind of payment you're making, and they're all exactly the same regardless of the device that you're on, which means I could start a payroll and I could draft it and I could pick up my phone an hour later and I could authorize it from my phone using exactly the same workflows. I'd probably on my phone want to change them over to the tiles so I can use my fingers, but important to note that. That's base commercial functionality. It's ACH 101 and Payments 101. We add an ancillary or another layer to this application in your ability to control access to this payment functionality. And we call that corporate banking. And so we want to spend a moment on what does that bring to the process that we haven't already seen. So right now our employees or ourselves can get in and execute these wires. But as our company starts to grow and we start to have multiple layers, or I just want to exercise better controls, we have this ability to go in and execute one more layer of strategies on how that happens. And that's where I'd like to go now. So let's look at the first things in this area are called company policy. Let's start at company policy. Company policy is a review of all of the limits that have been applied to my business through my ACH agreement with the credit union. So in this case, this particular